Morning and welcome to Macro Mondays. This is another edition of our Monday morning kind of 10 to 15 minute chat about current market events, what happened last week and what to look forward this week. I'm joined once again by Dave McLeish, founder of Wedge. Dave, what have you been seeing last week and what are we needing to look for this week, do you reckon?
Yeah, g'day, Charlie. For me, the focus for this week is going to be the Melbourne Cup. Now, given it's the first Tuesday of November, Melbourne Cup Day, that's tomorrow, but also what falls on that day is that the Reserve Bank of Australia announces their cash rate decision. So that's tomorrow afternoon, we get that. And there's actually quite a lot of talk around what the RBA is going to do. Clearly, central banks in and around the world are clearly debating cutting rates even further into higher inflation, and the RBA has got exactly that on its plate as we speak. So last week we saw a pretty bumper inflation number out of Australia, well ahead of expectations and pretty supersized in the opinion of the governor over there. And so I think that has put pay to any more interest rate cuts in Australia. And so my bet is that they're going to keep the cash rate unchanged. And that's actually, a little bit out of the ordinary for them. They quite like to steal the limelight from the horses on Melbourne Cup Day, and they do quite like to surprise the market. But I think this time they're gonna err on the side of caution and sit pat at the current cash rate, and instead probably just enjoy the big race just like everybody else does.
I think that may be a wise choice to kind of do nothing.
Yeah, I think it's the path of least pain. There's a lot of pressure on both sides of the equation at the moment, whereby a lot of people want to see more and more cuts because that'll obviously bring down mortgage rates, bring down borrowing rates, and take away a bit of that pain that we've all been feeling as households on both sides of the Tasman for a number of years. And so, I think there is a lot of kind of public groundswell for more cuts. But as I say, that inflation print also should be a bit of a worry for consumers. And no one likes, a kind of cost of living crisis. We've all experienced that too. And so we really don't want that to get out of hand by letting interest rates get too loose and too low for too long. We've kind of paid that price a while back, and so I don't want to see that repeated, and I'm sure most people don't either. So I think the path of least pain is just to sit tight and wait for a little bit more data.
Yeah, we kind of in this situation where the inflation data out of the US is uncomfortably similar to the 70s in how it's
Yep.
come down and then is obviously moderated and then is kind of hanging around an uncomfortable point where there could be some sort of catalyst either way, really. And I think that the US government shutdown is definitely helping their inflation data, perhaps, and it's definitely softening the economy even more so. It even seems strategic that the government is shut.
Hmm.
What do you think about last week and their rate cut? So their rate cut kind of, again, seemed compliant and almost connected to the government shutdown once again as well.
Well, certainly well orchestrated in the sense that the administration has been calling for interest rate cuts for quite some time. Clearly, there's talk about changes of the governor, changes of of committee members. So therefore it was really well and truly expected by the market to see that cut. What was interesting over the weekend was that we had a couple of Federal Reserve governors talking about how they weren't inclined to cut, coming out with much more what we would call hawkish comments, which is that they expect interest rates to either be unchanged or in fact actually in times maybe start to increase in response to higher inflation. And you're exactly right, Charlie, it's not just a US story. It is, as we've just discussed, it's an Aussie story, but it's also a New Zealand story, right? We've just touched 3% here in New Zealand as far as a headline CPI number goes, which is the top end of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's band. And, although you've got a lot of economists here in New Zealand saying that will be the top and that, there's a lot of reasons to think that we fall back closer to the 2% kind of midpoint target for everybody, that's still a real conundrum for central bankers that are meant to be, and especially here in New Zealand, meant to be inflation fighting. That is, in New Zealand, that's our one mandate. And so cutting more interest rates into inflation that's at the top of the band is kind of a difficult message to deliver. And I think that's what we're starting to see in the US as well. Inflation is persistently higher than it was. It's kind of fallen back from the eye-watering levels of the COVID crisis and the ensuing kind of supply constraints that the world felt. But we've settled at a higher rate. We're not settling down at the ones and twos. We're settling at the twos and threes, and that's a whole new paradigm shift that central bankers and we all have to get used to.
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis of the situation, and I think that we need to also consider all the inflation that's not seen, all the hidden inflation that's actually not actually kind of tracked in the headline CPI numbers. Now, the central banks have crazy amounts of resources and data, and they have real-time data for different aspects of the economy that is really granular. So they know the truth behind the headline numbers. And, when you go and you live your kind of day-to-day life, especially in New Zealand, consuming US goods as well, that's been difficult for the last 3 to 4 years minimum. We're on a kind of historically elevated average when it comes to the strength of the US dollar versus the New Zealand dollar. And, I was actually just like shopping over the weekend, and I was like, man, I'm pretty sure that has doubled since the last time my brain saved what I think I should pay for that.
Yeah. Well, the Kiwi dollar has definitely, been under pressure for quite a while because of those interest rate differentials. We've got Reserve Bank of New Zealand cutting when you're starting to hear, inflation starting to peak or starting to tip back up, should I say? And that is painful for all of us that are looking to do online shopping. Maybe on that, Charlie, in a somewhat related topic is AI and the earnings that we've just seen. Clearly, there's a lot of talk around the big tech companies driving obviously valuations and driving the overall stock market higher. Clearly, we had some earnings. I know that you wanted to obviously talk about those that have come out late last week, and obviously that's been a big part of the market, which has been kind of not only held up in stock markets, but also there's a big spending splurge there, isn't there, around the $380 billion on new data centers and so on. So maybe give us your thoughts on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I guess it was a tale of a few stories last week in terms of earnings. When you look at kind of Microsoft and Meta's earnings and how the market reacted, whereas you had very strong results, but also a strong market reaction out of Google and Amazon, which I thought was quite interesting. I would say they are adjacent to some of the circular revenue that I think Microsoft has got itself tied up into. And I think that the Meta story is a bit unknown. I don't feel like they have really presented themselves in a dominating position when it comes to AI, even though they have got a lot of people working on it and they could come out tomorrow with something game-changing. They really haven't seen the incremental progress that I have observed from Google in particular. Like, Google's really stepping up its game. It just released a marketing tool called Pomeli that's on like a limited access piece, which is like basically bringing like full scale, high quality, editable marketing collateral to your business by basically reading the website and learning from your website. So application of, increased productivity in a business, Google is delivering that. Amazon Web Services, their kind of continued growth into their data centers and their compute. Now, there's a lot of people in the market subsidizing compute right now. You've got Amazon and Microsoft themselves giving credits out. You've got VCs funding AI companies and following on in other software companies that are now pivoting into AI, and they're getting further funding, and they're doing R&D, and then they're using compute. And then you've got businesses and individuals experimenting with these tools and picking up extra subscriptions that they may not stick with long term while they work out which tools work for them. So I think it's really hard to know where the sustainable revenue is in some of these companies like a Replit or a Lovable, just because they could have a high level of adoption, but then actually have quite large numbers when it comes to churn. So I think those were like areas where you kind of looked into the market and you went, well, you know, Amazon and Google seem to be outperforming, seems to be like they are less exposed to what I would call leverage in the system, because that circular revenue is just really another form of leverage. And the market will basically reprice assets aggressively on a moment's notice if they believe that revenue is not what they quite thought it seemed. So I think that's the real risk to the market.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, on top of that, I've been reading a lot, and again, because I'm a fixed income kind of debt guy, obviously a lot of this capex spend is also you know, being debt funded. We're seeing some absolute jumbo sized debt issuance from the Oracles of this world and alike, and also the Mag 7 to the degree that you know, they've clearly got huge capex spends. They want to debt fund it. That is leverage. You know, in an environment where revenue is growing and there's lots of expectations around future revenue, that's great. But you know, was there any insights into, you know, from kind of the software side of things, or even hardware, around reporting earnings? You know, is there some weakness there, or are they actually fulfilling some of those dreams and those very high valuations?
I think that they can definitely seem like they're fulfilling those dreams for quite some time, and it's really hard to know. What I would say is that you've got like a company like Fiserv Inc., which is down 68% over the last year, and was down about 40% on earnings after guiding down. It's a typical software story around kind of fintech or finance and software, similar to how an Adobe has performed extremely poorly in this environment, right? And I guess the thesis is, oh well, you know, their moat has gone, their ability to deliver a differentiated, better product that people are willing to pay for has gone because others have just there are other ways to get that data or get that information or deliver that service or tool. So, you know, you look at Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, who had an interview over the weekend or on Friday, where Elon was speculating that basically all applications will be gone in the next 5 years, which is completely absurd. But I mean, it is a really interesting question around how do we consume product in a world where the user interface may change. So I think he is right in that perhaps the phone or how we interface with technology and compute may change over time. But I just think it's just going to become a more embedded experience. And from my use of AI, and our company is aggressively adopting AI in its practices and its business, I would say that like the chat GPT usage and the Perplexity usage at the top, you know, just using it is the tip of the iceberg. You know, some of the stuff that we're doing with other tools internally and getting the productivity gains, like you're really seeing some awesome outcomes, I think. But I kind of get a bit suspicious when we talk about, you know, AI is just going to eat all applications and they're just going to be gone. I just think that's a step too far.
Yeah, well, let's hope, because we've just built a really nice app.
Well, yeah, I think
and
about
spent
that a lot.
plenty of
So
money on it.
yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. I think that's a bit of a hyperbole from him. So.
Let's hope. Yep. Well, that's it from me today, Charlie. Anything from you?
I think that we're on the 15-minute mark, so I won't.
Okay.
I won't go into it. in detail, but I would love to leave us on a question to you, and it's going to take you 2 minutes to answer, which is why would an administration, I guess, kind of almost what's the word? Why would a government basically kind of try and hinder its central bank, or what would be the benefit to a Besset and a Trump kind of strategy of actually almost promoting something like a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency ecosystem over their own central bank system in 2 minutes?
Oh goodness, yeah, I was going to say, Charlie, come on, that's not a 2 minute answer question. Come on, let's be honest. That will take me days to go through that. I
What
think
should I
very,
read? What should I
yeah.
read to like
Oh
work that
goodness.
out?
Oh, there is just so much reading. There is so much content out there on that type of topic. I am I'm of the view that cryptocurrencies and the platforms that they're built on were largely with a view to actually improving the control that governments and potentially the Federal Reserve or central banks have over money. It's clearly an alternative asset class to fiat money, and my personal opinion is that actually the adoption of it is well and truly in the making, I guess, of those governments. That's why you see Trump and you see other administration decent members talking about the adoption of it and that it's a good thing. I also think that stable coins and variations thereof can be used very powerful tools for the administration to again ensure that things like the US dollar stays the reserve currency of the world. So that's a big topic that maybe we try and discuss in
No,
a
that's good.
separate yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I think your actual TLDR there was really good.
Oh,
And I second it. I second it.
oh, good, great. Well, maybe
Cool.
that's it. Maybe that's a topic for another
That's
day
it.
as well, though, right? We could
Yeah,
dive into it.
totally. Let's do a longer episode maybe on that one. But thanks for listening, everyone. As always, we'll be back on a Monday, and none of this was personal financial advice, just our opinions, just for information and entertainment purposes only. And we'll catch you again some other time.